Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan. I'm Dan Sloan. I'm president of this organization. Before we begin, let me remind you that we are on YouTube and live streaming today. We'll be taking questions from our audience online as well as for you here in attendance. If you haven't done so already, please put your phone on manner mode or turn it off. Okay, this may sound like hyperbole and is no slight to any other guest or guest we have hosted, but today history is being made at the club, and with this distinguished group of speakers that include, no short list here, the former UN Secretary General, 3 former heads of state, and oh, by the way, 2 Nobel laureates. In the interest of time, we only have 60 minutes. I will keep their introductions reasonably brief. But they are all part of a group known as the Elders. They are holding an event tonight at the UN University that will be attended by former Prime Minister Kishida. The Elders are an independent organization of former heads of state. It was founded in July 2007 by Nelson Mandela, Jimmy Carter, and former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan. It works for peace, justice, human rights, and sustainability. Our historic panel today includes Juan Manuel Santos, Chair of the Elders and former President of Colombia, Ban Ki-moon, Deputy Chair of the Elders and former UN Secretary General. I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly, Elbegdorj Tsakhia, former President and Prime Minister of Mongolia, and Dr. Denis Mukwege, I'm going to mispronounce this as well, Denis Mukwege, all right, who is also a Nobel Peace Laureate, and Ernesto Zedillo, former President of Mexico. Again, we are completely honored to have you join us this afternoon. The Elders have visited Hiroshima. They today went to the Prime Minister's residence as well as the Diet. They are marking the 80th anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki as well as the end of World War II. This is part of their group's nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament initiative. We will have President Santos introduce everyone as well as make the opening remarks for the group. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, and I think you already introduced the group, President Zedillo, former President of Mexico, former President of Mongolia, former Secretary General of the UN, and Dr. Mukwege, Nobel Peace Laureate from Congo. We came to Japan, and specifically to Hiroshima, to pay our respects to the victims of the A-bomb, and precisely because it was 80 years ago. So we decided to make our board meeting in Hiroshima. And not only did we come to pay our respects to the victims, but to call the world leaders and the world in general to initiate some kind of dialogue to control the increased risk of a nuclear war. We are seeing this risk increasing in the past 3, 4, 5, 10 years at an astonishing rate. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of this year, I, as chair of the Elders, was invited to unveil the doomsday clock in Washington. The scientists that determined the time of the clock determined to change the clock to 89 seconds to doomsday, the closest it has been in 77 years. And one of the reasons is because they see very clearly the risk of a nuclear war increasing at a very frightening rate. So we thought that coming to Hiroshima, because this had been one of the main priorities of the elders, coming to Hiroshima and making this call to the world leaders and to the world in general would be appropriate. We have, as was said, met the Prime Minister, members of the Diet. We are also very much concerned with the other existential risks that we are confronting as citizens of the world. Climate change seems to have been deprioritized. It's not the main challenge, especially after the U.S. decided to withdraw from the Paris Agreement. We are also very worried of the lack of cooperation on what they call disruptive technologies, AI. We are trying to promote some kind of collaboration to build some governance in how to handle AI. This has been part of our work in the last years, and we also came to Japan and we told the Prime Minister how we think Japan at this moment can exercise special leadership in these causes, in these risks, in these challenges. Japan is today probably the biggest donor for climate change. It's been one of the biggest donors in another problem that the world has, which is a lack of collaboration on the health issue. Fortunately, there was an agreement recently signed on the pandemics, but still we need a lot more cooperation there. And we think that Japan can play a very important role of leading the discussion, promoting the discussion, increasing public awareness, because that's what we think is absolutely necessary in order for the leaders to take the correct decisions. Unfortunately, the leaders have not taken the correct decisions. They have been short-sighted. We need leadership that looks beyond the next elections and take, even if they're unpopular, the correct decisions. I will stop there, as this is a simple introduction. My colleagues are ready to answer any questions, and I'm sure that you will also like to ask questions and not hear speeches. So,
thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We're going to open up the floor first to our working press. As I mentioned, we'll be taking questions as well from those online. If you have a question, identify yourself and your organization. Please try to limit yourself to one question if possible and no speeches. Our first question, yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Himari Siemens from the Japan Times. My question is that Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba didn't participate in the conference of signatories to the UN treaty, and what signal would Japan send to the world if it remains absent in future conferences?
And if you want to designate a specific speaker, or the chair can designate who.
What about if we bring microphone somewhere here instead of going corner?
Oh, we always do it that way, sir. We got one on each corner, so, yeah.
So it's a little bit harder to listen.
Oh, okay.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, just repeat it, it's fine.
Is the microphone working?
Working.
I can give you the hand mic if you prefer.
Okay, if it's working,
Yeah,
that's okay.
yeah.
Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba didn't participate in the conference of signatories to the UN Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons held in March. What signal would Japan send to the world if it continues to be absent in future conferences?
And do you have a, okay, yes, sir.
Maybe our colleague from Mexico can answer that question.
Well, Japan is not part of the treaty. And I mean, it's a government decision not to go to a particular meeting. That doesn't mean that the government of Japan has not followed the evolution since its inception of this TPNW. What we are doing as elders is to call upon the government of Japan to consider what the TPNW is. We are not calling for Japan to join right now, simply to give consideration, particularly under the new circumstances in which the United States seems to be hesitant, to say the least, to honor its traditional alliances. I think it is up to the government of Japan and the nation of Japan to decide best on their strategy to protect the Japanese people, but we also believe, quite respectfully, that the government of Japan should continue to consider the existence of this treaty, and it will be up to the government of Japan to decide whether or not is in their interest. We see, however, that Japan has been a very active country in the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Japan has called upon the nuclear powers many times to honor their obligations under the NPT, and therefore we expect Japan to be not only what traditionally has been, but also at some moment that the government of Japan considers that is best to be a more engaged actor in the movement towards the abolition of nuclear weapons. We, as elders, believe in total nuclear disarmament. We believe in nuclear abolition. We know, however, that this is still an ideal. And therefore, at the same time that we call for nuclear abolition, we also believe that there are pathways to get to that point. We have produced a strategy with a set of recommendations that we just updated, nuclear weapons policy position paper, where we speak about the 4Ds. And basically what it means is that we call, first of all, for countries to adopt, the nuclear countries, to adopt a no first use doctrine, actually as China has. We also ask nuclear powers to start reducing again, that process stopped some years ago, the number of nuclear weapons. We are calling upon those powers to reduce the number of weapons actually deployed. There are still, out of 12,000 weapons, 3,000 are still deployed, put in vehicles for delivery, and actually 2,000 nuclear weapons are in a state of high alert. What that means is that if there is a moment in which a country or a leader has to consider the use of nuclear weapons, there is only a window of a few minutes to decide whether or not to push the button. And obviously, that is bad by itself, but it also can be possible to have an accident. So we believe that it is possible to have the most ambitious objective of abolition, but also to find gateways to that. And we are very worried because in the last 20 years, the system for controlling or mitigating the risk of nuclear weapons has been eroded systematically. In 2002, the United States withdrew from the ABM treaty, the anti-ballistic treaty. A few years ago, both the United States and Russia withdrew from the intermediate range nuclear forces treaty. And now the negotiations to extend or to even make a more ambitious STAR agreement, which refers to a strategic, the most powerful weapons, there are no negotiations. And that instrument will expire next year. In fact, Russia has declared 2 years ago that they don't consider it valid. And in fact, Russia has put their nuclear weapons in a state of alert 2 years ago as a consequence of the illegal invasion that they did against Ukraine. So we feel that the whole nuclear weapon system is crumbling. So that is why our sense of urgency for calling upon countries like Japan also to be proactive in promoting the reduction of this nuclear risk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, Douglas.
Hi, I'm Doug Montgomery with Global Connects Media. So the whole group here represents, kind of the whole world, different countries, different cultures. My question is, you guys come up with policy statements, suggestions, whether it's nuclear, stopping nuclear proliferation, climate change, etc. How does this group come up with a decision on who moves first, who pays? Like, how do you guys reach cooperation amongst yourselves to have one voice to speak to Prime Minister of Japan or President of the United States, etc.? How do you guys cooperate?
How do we cooperate? I don't understand the question.
Yeah, well, our founder, Nelson Mandela, was obsessed with one word, dialogue. He even said, the most powerful weapon there exists in the world is to sit down and talk. How did we reach an agreement to, for example, make a statement like the one we made yesterday? Well, it took some time because you are a journalist, you know how difficult it is to get agreements on the correct words, but we manage, and that's what we do, and that's part of our DNA, to reach agreements on the important issues, no matter how difficult they are. We think that we have a responsibility to make ourselves known and our views known, speak to power as one of our main principles, no matter how powerful this power is, and speak with the truth. So that's part of our motto.
So there's no vote, there's no veto, nothing like that. It's dialogue. The group has to come together.
It's dialogue and the building of consensus. I think most of us, I think all of us, have had experience of negotiating and trying to create consensus, which is what we think is needed urgently in the world. You go to the UN Security Council, and they don't speak to each other. The big powers, they just veto each other. That's exactly what we don't need in today's world. What we need is building consensus and cooperating to confront the issues we have in front of us.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir. Oh, please, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Ban Ki-moon.
I myself, when I was working for the Korean government, was one of the 5 negotiators with North Korea to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. We have a very historic agreement. It was reported and known as one of the historic agreement between South and North Korea to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. Before that, to allow this happen, American government withdrew all the nuclear weapons which had been there on the southern part of Korea. Now, what had happened, North Koreans had just took this paper, use this one, soon. That's a very, very disappointing, and that should be really, international community should speak out strongly against all this matter. What is missing at this time, we are living in the 21st century. I am deeply concerned at this time. Now, big powers are now talking about the use of nuclear weapons, particularly when Russia has illegally invaded Ukraine, and they are now, while this war has been dragging 3 years almost, then they are now using, saying that the possibility of using nuclear weapons. India, Pakistan, even though they are not fully officially recognized as nuclear power stations, nuclear weapon stations, but there's a possibility that either India or Pakistan, if they one side use nuclear weapons, this will really totally destroy the international security system. Therefore, many people will ask, what's the use of having this agreement when these agreements are not kept sincerely? That's the problem now. Now, the elders are now here in Japan, and we were there day before yesterday. We were in Hiroshima Peace Park. Hiroshima Peace Park. I was the first UN Secretary General who had visited and paid a tribute to the victims. That was 2010 August. At the invitation of then Prime Minister Abe, I attended very solemn ceremony. Maybe at that time, more than 1,000 people participated. The question was whether, at that time, whether U.S. ambassador in Japan would participate in that ceremony. There was no confirmation, but later it was reported that U.S. ambassador, when I think the U.S. government must have been psychologically pressed when Secretary General of the United Nations was for the first time to pay tribute to this. No more Hiroshima, no more nuclear weapons. That's what we've been speaking out. Now that, after that, President Obama, 4 years later, paid the visit and paid the tribute. That was a good beginning by world leaders to recognize the importance of keeping this agreement not to use any nuclear weapons. In fact, President Obama, during his first year, he received the Nobel Peace Prize, just simply assuring that he would do his best to make this world free of nuclear weapons. That kind of leadership is necessary at this time. But now, President Putin was slightly suggesting that if this war is dragging, he may use nuclear weapons. And India, Pakistan, who knows what will happen. Now, there are many other countries, particularly Iran, is in the process of nuclear weapon manufacturing. Therefore, international community, particularly global leaders, they must work very hard with the global citizenship and global vision for the future. They have their political responsibility to assure that all the humanity living in this world, planet Earth, can live in peace and security without fear of nuclear weapons anymore. That's a very important mission the elders are now giving out to the people of the world. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Please go ahead.
Yes, on the nature of the group, none of the members of the group have really political power, right? All we have, and probably I should say that I am exception because I don't claim to have the merits of my colleagues. It's, let's say, a moral reputation. This group normally has 12 members. Just let me mention that 8 Nobel Peace Prizes have been or are active members of the elders. It's hard to find a group that can gather, 8 Nobels for great merits that they had. This group has had 2 former UN Secretary Generals. This group has active, actually, 2 high human rights commissioners, UN high rights commissioners. These groups has, a lot of experience, but we have no power. The only thing that we can do is to speak out. Mandela always said, speak truth to power. That's one thing. And sometimes you have to speak loudly, and sometimes if you want to be effectively, you have to do it quietly. That's what we call two-track diplomacy. So we have no power, but we have common values, and because of those common values, we happen to agree most of the time.
And I want to clarify something. Right here, we are only men, but we have gender equilibrium. 6 marvelous women and 6 men are the members of the elders. Right. As a matter of fact, one of the members, women members that should have been here, could not be here because the airspace in Pakistan was interrupted because of the conflict between Pakistan and India. And one of the surprises that we had, or not the surprises, one of the requests that we have is, how is it possible that 2 countries like India and Pakistan are shooting at each other? Both are nuclear powers. Where is the United Nations? Why did the United Nations not intervene? That was why the United Nations was created for. And this is one of the big problems that we have. Lack of leadership and lack of effective action of the multilateral system that was created after World War II.
All right, let's go to our next question. Yes, sir. Yes.
My name is Takuya Nishimura, freelance journalist. Welcome to Japan, the elders. There are some people in Japan who suffered from atomic bombs, both in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And most of them are dead, but some of them alive. So the families of them is organizing new organization for the families each other in July. What kind of message do you expect them to deliver to the world? Thank you.
We had the privilege of speaking to many of the survivors, or to a few of the survivors in Hiroshima. The story they tell is extremely touching. We celebrated very much that last year the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to the victims, the survivors. What they're doing is very important because what is there in the museum, and what they all say, no more Hiroshimas, is what the world needs to hear. And I think the big challenge is to have that message distributed around the world, and the young people around the world, again, take this issue as an important issue for them, for their future. Many of you probably remember in the 70s the massive demonstrations against nuclear weapons in the US, in Europe, all around the world. Right now that we have the situation but dramatically worse, nobody's protesting. We need to call the attention of the world for this issue, because sometimes it seems that nobody's hearing.
Yeah, I want to address.
Please. Yes, sir.
Yeah, please. Yeah, talking with the victim, I think that there is one thing we need really to remind is a trauma. And talking with the children or the next generation, we can feel that when they're talking about what happened to their own parents or grandparents, they're traumatized. And this is something that most of the time we are working on it, the intergenerational trauma. And I think that is very important for all of us to understand that this can't happen without consequence on the population, but also on the next generations. And we need to take care of them as victims also.
Thank you. Just a note, and I mentioned to the elders before we began today, we hosted Hidankyo Group, the chairman, before he received, on behalf of the organization, the Nobel Peace Prize last year, and I understand you met with representatives when you were in Hiroshima. Koda?
Thank you very much for coming to the club today. My name is Khaldun Azhari. I'm for Laureate News and Arab News Japan, the Middle East. There's no question how important your mission is, and nobody can dispute that at all, and it's very important for the safety of humanity. But the conventional weapons have been doing basically the same destruction that can be made by nuclear weapons, except for the time. Maybe nuclear weapon needs few seconds, but conventional takes maybe 1 year. As we can see now in Gaza, that is turned into basically a rubble by the help of conventional weapons and very advanced missiles. And that can be also watched online. Now anybody can turn on the phone and we can see the destruction. Now Gaza is basically a Stone Age area. So do you think there is too much stress on the nuclear weapons, and we are forgetting how the conventional weapons are doing the same destruction, and basically nobody cares so much as they care about nuclear weapons? Like you say, no more Hiroshima, no more Nagasaki, which is great logo, but also the people in Arab countries, they want to hear no more Gaza. But nobody says no more Gaza because conventional weapons seems to be okay with that.
No, we do, sir.
Thank you.
We do.
There are today more than 140 armed conflicts in the world today, with something which makes the situation worse. The respect for the rules of war have disappeared. So the violation of human rights and the destruction of civil society in these conflicts has increased tremendously. So the conflicts are getting worse and worse. We, as elders, are also permanently making a call for these conflicts to stop, for the UN to be more effective in trying to stop these conflicts. Many times we have said to the UN Secretary General, you should go here or should go there. The UN should be present, avoiding this humanitarian disaster. But the fact that we are here promoting the abolition of nuclear weapons in no way means that we are not very concerned with what is happening, for example, in Gaza, which is something that from every perspective is a tremendous tragedy.
Most recently, there have been much more often talk about nuclear issues. This is very sad and very worrisome. Therefore, there is no limit for us to emphasize the importance of no more nuclear weapons. Now, while discussing with the Prime Minister Ishiba of Japan, I raised one thing that even though I cannot confirm it, nobody can confirm it, what is written there between Russia and North Korea. Of course, superficially, we know that each and every 12,000 soldiers would pay some thousand money monthly. So that will be very helpful. But behind this, I cannot confirm it, but there is some speculation that North Koreans after having been very much frustrated not to be able to successfully launch their long-range missile, like continental missiles. Because each time they failed, they were able to successfully launch the missile, but it could not break this atmosphere. It could not return to atmosphere without being burnt. So each time there's a burnt. Therefore, there might be some discussions between the two that in return for this dispatching soldiers, Russians should provide a certain technology. In such a case, I told that Japan, not to mention Japan, United States is not safe, would not be safe, because they have enough capacity now. They have always been successful in launching, but this missile could not come back without being burnt. So if they receive technology, then this may easily reach American continent, US continent. That's a very worrisome scenario which we have to be very careful.
I'm going to ask that we stay with the working press for right now, so please identify yourself and your organization. If we have time, we'll get everybody.
We'll try to be also short in our answers.
Hello, I'm Keitaro Nishikawa from TV Tokyo. Welcome to Japan, and thank you for the initial speech. I would like to ask about Ukraine and Russia. Firstly, what do you think about the current war situation between Ukraine and Russia? And I would like to hear about some opinion how the war should be ended as well. Maybe chairman and
yes.
vice,
Right, so
both, if I.
Person Santos.
What was the question?
One more time, sir. Just in the situation with Ukraine and Russia.
Speak slowly.
My apology. So the current war situation between Ukraine and Russia, and if I could, I would like to hear about your opinion about how the war should be ended.
How to come to peace in the current war in Ukraine.
How
to find peace.
Oh, well, first, by initiating a constructive dialogue, it is very regrettable that Putin called for the meeting in Istanbul and decided not to go. If you don't sit down and talk, then there will never be peace. You don't make peace with your friends. You make peace with your enemies. And so you sit down and start making agreements that will lead you to peace. I hope that President Trump delivers on his idea of pressing both sides to the maximum in order for them to reach an agreement. What one can sense is that there is, at least right now, a better chance to having peace than we had some months ago, and we hope that the constructive dialogue can bring some kind of solution.
Okay. Just before we begin to kind of have second chances, I'd like to ask you, Mr. Chair, or any of the others, you mentioned the situation or nuclear risk is dramatically worse. You noted the advance of the doomsday clock in particular. Why do you think humanity, society is perhaps more desensitized to this issue than 1945 or the arms race of the 50s and 60s?
That's a very, very good question that we also ask ourselves. And that's why we are here. Precisely. The reason we are here is we come to Hiroshima, 80 years, Japan is the only victim of a nuclear bomb, and from here, hopefully we can spread the word more effectively of the world, for the world to be much more aware. But that question we ask ourselves every day.
Thank you, sir. Our next question, then I'll come back to our working press here, comes from John Getty of Reuters. He asked, do you think the uncertainty that U.S. President Donald Trump has cast over Washington's commitment to its security alliances around the world could lead to nuclear proliferation among its allies, either here in Asia or in Europe?
Would you like, Ernesto?
Well, that is something that has been repeatedly commented by experts and observers and journalists. There has been, let's say, the U.S. nuclear umbrella that has been provided to countries like Japan, Korea, in a way to Europe, and given the attitude and the behavior of the U.S. government recently, well, that security is being questioned. That indeed could pose another question, whether countries should consider providing themselves with other means to have more security. Well, what we elders believe is that that will be a terrible mistake because nuclear weapons actually don't give security. Perhaps the belief on deterrence and mutually assured destruction had some logic back in the 1950s, 60s, 70s. But frankly, today, it doesn't have any logic. When people thought about this, they were assuming two conditions. One was full rationality from the part of those that could push the button, and full knowledge. And second, they assumed that those actors will have full control of nuclear weapons. Today, that is not really something that must be taken for granted. Given the behavior, by the way, that we have seen in some important leaders, we cannot assume rationality. And we also know that systems to control nuclear weapons, given the evolution of IT and artificial intelligence and other technological aspects, well, it's questionable whether full control can be had on nuclear weapons. So the original logic no longer stands. Nuclear weapons will not give security to the world. The only thing that will give security to the world will be abolition and safeguards to ensure that that is respected. So there is a risk indeed. You know, nuclear powers have failed to honor their obligation under Article 6 of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Mexico was one of the great promoters of that. A Mexican got the Nobel Prize for that. But there was an assumption, there was an idea, that was the commitment of nuclear powers to start a process of disarmament. And what we are seeing today is exactly the opposite trend. Under the title of modernization, nuclear powers are spending a lot of money to have more nuclear destructive power. They call it modernization, but it's not modernization. It's to have more nuclear capacity that not only would destroy their adversaries, if they consider, but also they will destroy humanity and also nature on Earth. So it's totally irrational.
Yes, would anyone else like to comment? Or, please.
In a very general term, I'm not going to specific, but we should know why the leadership level, leaders of the world are now meeting the expectations of their own people and global society. my experience for 10 years as a Secretary General, you bet that I have met almost all the leaders of the world, without almost no exception. By the time, as I go into about 5 years or 6 years, I found some commonalities. It's very difficult to find a real global leaders with a global citizenship, with a global vision, future vision. At best, I could characterize them as national leaders. It's very hard to find a global leader going beyond their own country. Everybody is much more seriously spending time and energy and money on their re-election. So I've been confronting them, frankly speaking. Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, I sincerely hope that you should look far beyond what you are doing now. Then they say, well, Secretary General, I understand, but I will do exactly what you say, but let me be forced to re-elected. I'm not re-elected, I cannot help you. This is their answer. So each time I had to be frustrated. How can I trust these leaders? How can I work as a Secretary General and world peace and development and human rights, depending upon their leadership? So this is exactly what happened now in 21st century. We don't see any difference from US President now. Can we call him as a global leader? Can we call Putin as a global leader? So this is really very hard. Then it depends upon the people. It depends upon the people. You know, I'm not going to interfere in domestic politics, but I'm just saying, generalized terms. So it's very difficult. So young generations, particularly, they should speak out. The citizenship, global citizenship. So educate young people with the global citizenship, with the global vision. Then by the time they become leaders, I think we can change this world for a better. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have two more questions first, and then you'll go second. Yes. Yeah, please. Either way is fine.
Hi, this is Himari from the Japan Times again. You mentioned that you don't have any political power but have a moral reputation, but I'm going to ask a political question anyways. Iran's top security official, Ali Shamkhani, reportedly yesterday said that Iran is ready to sign a nuclear deal today with the US in exchange for the immediate lifting of all economic sanctions. Shamkhani's statement came hours after US President Donald Trump told Gulf leaders that he wants to make a deal with Iran to scale down its nuclear weapons program, but said that Tehran must withdraw its support for proxy groups in the Middle East first. How do you urge Iran to respond to Trump's conditions on signing a nuclear deal? And how do you urge Trump who said that his offer is not going to last forever and that Iran needs to choose right now?
We have been behind the scenes because we work in two levels: public advocacy and private diplomacy. We have been active in private diplomacy on the issue of Iran and U.S. And we are waiting to see exactly what is the evolution of what you mentioned. When you start a conversation or an approach by putting too many conditions, that is not a good signal. It's better to say, I do want to make a deal, and let's talk about this deal without too many preconditions. As you know, the Iran, Middle East, that has a lot of ramifications. I would hope that the U.S. and President Trump understands that they cannot force Iran to do everything that their Israeli friends want U.S. to do or Iran to do, because then there will be no deal. They have to be a bit pragmatic. But the time is ripe. The Arab countries are supporting, have been sending messages that they would support in an agreement like, for example, Iran committing itself not to produce the bomb and to stop all efforts in that direction, but they have to have something in compensation, like, for example, the lifting of the sanctions. It's logical. It's common sense. And then that is what leaders, good leaders, need to understand and exercise. There is an opportunity. Let's take it. I hope they take it.
Thank you.
Our final question.
Hello, I'm Ashima, and I'm from the Soka Gakkai International, and I'm also from India. So thank you so much for highlighting how very close to nuclear war India and Pakistan recently were. And I want to ask you on behalf of civil society, at times like this, what would be your very concrete suggestions of how civil society can reopen channels of dialogue, especially when both sides are still struggling with generational trauma of partition?
Your neighbor from Mongolia can be perfect to answer that question.
Thank you very much. You know, I regard myself a young elder, and young elders tend to listen to other elders. And also, this is last question, and my comment gonna be maybe last one. In Mongolia, we say that last camel's load is always heaviest. And I hope I'm gonna be like last camel. And on civil society, on everything, really we regard that civil society is a soul of nation. Civil society is people itself. I think civil society and people have that power. If civil society have more voice and they come together more, I think only thing, I was in politics for long, and I know that politicians usually move watching people's mood, where the wind is blowing. And those are the very different creatures. But in order to make that decision, difficult decisions as civil society demand, I think we need to listen to more civil societies. I have just two ideas. You know, one of the founding principles of our elders was the human rights, pursuing human rights. And I know in Japan there is also Expo, title is Life. And nuclear weapon threat, it can eliminate whole life on this earth. I think we cannot leave our children, our grandchildren, nuclear weapon loaded in their backyard. How can you go from this earth? How can you go peacefully rest our generation? That nuclear weapon is created during our generation. This should be abolished during our generation. And the elders has one clear mission. We are for abolishing every nuclear warheads on this earth. That's the very clear mission. If Japan, if civil society, any organization wants to work with us, we are really happy to work. But after this, as a young elder, and also I'm with the other organization, International Commission Against Death Penalty, I actually ended in Mongolia death penalty, while Mongolia is located between Russia and China. that really took, you have to exercise hardcore issues. Death penalty is one of the hardcore issues. Only requires from the leaders to take action. If you ask people, people tend to say, I'm for death penalty. And because of that, you have to exercise. After me, president came and tried to introduce death penalty, but he could not introduce. And many people asked, we abolished death penalty. It's a great thing for Mongolia. Mongolian history divided with blood, without blood. And I started that without blood. And I know that death penalty is a state killing. We cannot stop one person killing each other, but we can stop state killing. There are 3 advanced economies in the world. United States, Japan, Singapore have a death penalty. But United States, 26 states already abolished death penalty. 3 states put moratorium. And Japan is not executing since 2022. And if Japan stay again 8 years, it can be abolished death penalty in a practice. And I really would like to see this great nation can go respect the life. Some leaders say that because of my people, because of my elections, I cannot abolish. But that's not a strong leader. A strong leader usually associates with a life, not with the death. And a strong leader usually advocate life. And I will, next days, I will meet the Japan Bar Association, many NGOs which demanding for life in Japan. And also I will meet policymakers. I will have lectures at Rishi University. And also I will have a meeting with the Japan National Press Club. And if you would like to come to that cause, please come. I think every politician can make that legacy. Today's Japanese decision makers. When I was a member of parliament, when I was a member of cabinet, I abolished death penalty. That's the new path for Japan. I think we are looking for that, and 147 nations already abolished death penalty. That's one thing. We can see that our world without nuclear weapons, we can see our world in our lifetime without death penalty. No more Hiroshima, no more Nagasaki, no more Gaza. Death penalty is a starting point. If you would like to address those issues, violent issues with the human rights and those issues, human rights violations and dirty cop, dirty persecutors, stop the death penalty. After that, you usually address. Your society will become more humanistic, addressing other issues. If you have death penalty, you will not address other issues. If you have nuclear weapons, you will not address that conventional weapon, how can destroy those places. And we see that in Gaza. And because of that, stopping death penalty is a starting point. And all you know that media people, Hakamada, in 1968, he was sentenced to death. He fought for life and to become the innocent 45 years. And in 2014, he became out of jail. Only 56 years took for the Japanese guy to become innocent, prove innocent. Because of that dirty persecutors, because of those corruptions, actually made his life miserable. It should stop. In order to stop, in order to respect, in order to listen to our people's voice, I think we need to do something difficult things. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Gentlemen, we were indeed extremely honored to host you today. Having the elders here raises the value of our organization. So we thank you very much for your time. As is the custom of our club, we give all our speakers a one-year honorary membership. So we look forward next time you're in Tokyo to come by the FCCJ. We'll give you a longer tour. Thank you very much.
But I was a journalist before.
Okay.
Do I get one?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh. Again, we thank our guests today for a very enlightening and thorough discussion. If you just stay seated while they leave the room. Thank you very much.